Good afternoon, Earth. This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from Garage Art today. Working on oil painting. Here we are, kind of switching gears for the moment. Just going to warm up by reglazing our hair a deep, pretty thick, translucent violet. And then we'll probably move on to scales from there. But it'll just take a couple of minutes to do this. So that leaves some nice texture ridges, as well as steepens the color of the hair and separates it from the shadows of the rest of the figure. So I'm going to think about what I'm doing next and come back. Alright, now after standing back from it for a minute, I'm thinking the coat's going to be too busy for what's going to be happening after I get the scales laid in and start populating the road of scales with scenes. So I'm going to simplify it with a Prussian blue added to the previously used violet glaze there for the hair, and just kind of unify all the lights and darks with a glaze of that Prussian, and then maybe highlight it a little bit more with some white. So there we go. Zoom in a little bit. I'm just doing the code, so let's put it right on there.
Taking aim at abdomen, stumbling as I guilt trip from pixie dust particles laced with the American way of conforming. I lash out in defense of culture to stimulate dormancy, but I'll rest for a second and build on my mass collection. Ask questions of words since birth, compile images styled by each lesson. Cursed with illogical thinking and eyes as a science. Crash parties of orthodox without the ignorant invited. The path I'm destined to walk is widening, but narrow to the closed-minded. Hidden by brush and greenery, I can't see but my flow's find it. Blinded as I step through this forest of activists, dodging thorns of the norm, decoding life's puny form, disguised as a pacifist. After this confrontation with the beast of regret, untainted existence is the resort of taking a breath, so I hold back and don't inhale to see what life takes me. Elevate flesh to a level of stress, cause I believe life hates me. In a sea of normlessness and abandoned crowds that stand around and wait for their performances. I waited that cul-de-sac to see what karma gets, cause what goes around comes around, holds weight and laid up on this rim. Will I drown due to the obesity of my thought process as gravity pulls down to impede my self-conquest? Filling my pockets with payments of nonsense while the cover charge toothless play of my life is time spent. At times I stand on the edge of this cliff and forget rap before I step across that threshold where rhyme bends and splits at. I try to evade the barricades and downplay the mishaps, convincing myself that the speeches are related to the syntax. My emotional famine is at an all-time height where I'm forced to rationalize between comfort and what's right, but when I write I'm comfortable. Pen encompasses the agony of the turmoil drenched existence of this Shakespearean tragedy. But does this hero die due to his flaws, or will I float in purgatory state before I take the fall? So for now I won't wait, trudging through knee-high Satan, contemplating whether I should stay on this frequency and change the station. Cause now I'm tuned in the ruin, falling flat on my abstract, too intimidated to press on, but not depressed enough to backtrack. The story too horrific to be laughed at, too surreal to be realistic, dangling between an individual and its statistic. Will I see the light at the end of the tunnel, or has there been an avalanche that closed off the outlet, snuffing the option of if I'll have a chance to escape this fate? There is a right choice, I walk this road, wide it and closed, continuing the progress with field pros.
Alright, trying to decide if I want to break out some white and hit any highlights on this thing. This coat before I continue. I'm kind of liking the sheer darkness of it and the subtle lights that I left in the folds and bends of the figure. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave it here and probably come back to scales.
Especially when you're young, man. If you can go through it, you'll come out like gold. If I can go through the fire.
Okay, so I've taken the Prussian blue, hideously violet, mixed in some white, and made this really nice kind of blue lavender. So I'm going to use that for a scale color for the foreground scales initially. I guess I'll zoom in on the whole dragon, just in case I run up the side of it or something. Alright, that's decent. Okay, here we go.
Guides like myself take the people through their first trip. It was a spiritual thing. Some people say, I believe in God. I don't have to believe in God. I have been one with God.
It was amazing. We had a growing sense of community among equally eccentric people, and it was a lovely time.
There was a psychedelic nation that was formed. It seemed as though it was going to work out.
I love you. I love you.
Evangelists have an epiphany at church. We're the same, except we were LSD evangelists. Jesus, that's what he was trying to do. I think we did a better job than Jesus. Christians would hate me for saying that, but it's true. We touch more souls than just because it's a modern world, and Jesus didn't have no acid.
Did it feel like you were turning on the world?
I really thought we were on our way. We guesstimated that maybe 750 million people might be willing to take acid. We'd be willing to give it a try.
What was that based on, yes?
Intuition, optimism. Somebody in Africa who's starving to death might have relatively little interest in. Or on the other hand, they might think it's really cool. Who knows? But still, we thought that it would be a fair shot. That if 750 million doses would be not too shabby. $750 million doses, which is roughly 200 kilos of pure acid. The next step might be 20 kilos, and then that's sort of what we were hoping.
How soon were you hoping to be able to complete your mission?
I suppose I was thinking in terms of a couple of years, maybe. When I finished my work in Windsor, I wanted to learn how to fly. After I got through the basic training, I flew up to Napa. When I got off the airplane, a fellow said to me, "Are you Tim Scully?" And I said, "Yes." And somebody else grabbed me from behind and put the handcuffs on. They said, "We're federal agents and we're arresting you on a fugitive warrant from Denver, Colorado." I figured that I was in deep trouble.
Scully was advised of his constitutional rights and transported to the BNDD office in San Francisco, California for processing.
I arrived at the federal building, got taken into a booking room and took my picture and my fingerprints. I was told I could get a maximum sentence of 56 years. I said, "Oh shit."
Robert T. Scully, male, Caucasian, 23 years of age, born August 27, 1944, 6 foot 1 inches tall, 130 pounds, slender build, brown hair, hazel eyes. I was the group supervisor for the investigation of the LSD sales in the San Francisco area in 1966. LSD was kiddie dope. In other words, kids are using this. The real men are using cocaine and heroin and those kind of drugs. I felt it was more dangerous because nobody knew the outcome of where this thing is going to end up. And it's causing problems to society.
I wound up as a junior agent with Gordon White to fight the hallucinogen traffic. And most of these young people were the first of the baby boomers. They saw a lot of things in the world they thought were hypocritical. They were reacting against them. And they weren't totally wrong. I just didn't agree with the way they were doing it.
Peculiarities. Wears glasses and walks with an extremely large gait. Associates. Donald R. Douglas.
Tim and I met in kindergarten. There is no question that Tim is a science genius. The part of him that you mostly don't see is the guy who figured the right place for an accelerator pedal is flat on the floor. And he's the one who, the very first time we took LSD together, said, you know, Don, we can make this with a real gleam in his eye.
What is LSD? How does it work? When did it all begin?
In the late 50s and very early 1960s, LSD samples went to psychologists and psychiatrists who were doing medical research, and also caught the attention of the CIA looking at the possibility of using LSD in the Cold War.
CIA were looking at it for one thing, but the side effects were such that a person that would be looking for a high, this would be the kind of side effects that they would enjoy.
I just felt so warm, so human and alive for the first time in years.
And the word started to get around that there was this really interesting substance. Magazine articles were published and a buzz developed.
I mean, I feel as though I have no enemies in the world, and this is very lovely.
By 1965, the FDA had classified LSD as an experimental drug. The sources of supply started being driven underground.
And that's about when we started looking at, honestly, in his operation.
Owsley was the man. He had the brand name. LSD was being sold on the street as Owsley acid.
Happiness and peace is getting more and more out of my reach.
He's the Pied Piper, and people would be following him around because he's handing out the goodies. It was pretty easy for us to just get in the line and then see what was going on.
Tim and I are interested in making drugs, and Owsley learned about us, and he visited one day. So I was looking around for someone who could help, and I ran into this kid, Tim Scully. I thought, hey, I need somebody. You want to do it? He was a bright kid, real bright.
We had 3x5 index cards. Get a big piece of paper and draw telephone calls, money transfers. You put together a jigsaw puzzle.
And that's where we would put Timothy Scully and Don Douglas.
We drove to Owsley's LSD lab. Becoming his apprentice passed on all the essential knowledge that I otherwise would have had to learn the hard way.
Owsley and Tim would discuss chemistry texts at the kitchen table, and I would try to keep up for a little while, but then I'd just go smoke a joint and play my guitar.
We tableted up 100,000 doses or more of white lightning and put that out on the street.
Asbury was an intersection of two streets in San Francisco. And if you wanted to deal drugs, this was the place to be.
LSD traffickers were not the same as other drug lords. Our basic tool in undercover work was to appeal to greed. And some of them didn't have the greed. I mean, some of them really were motivated by things other than money. You didn't even know if he'd show up, and if he did, he might want to talk about karma.
I heard it makes you not only closer with yourself, but with everybody. This sort of love people.
And I was doing it because I thought that nothing else could save the world.
That term saved the world. I mean, so many of them used it. I reacted to those LSD people who said, you know, how amazing their experience had been. The same way I reacted to many heroin dealers that I met who said that heroin was better than sex. I didn't believe it.
I knew it was going to get bigger and bigger, and I felt we had to do what we could to try to slow this thing down.
You have to take into consideration changes that have taken place in the social order, the abandon with which they conduct themselves today.
There's nothing grown up or sophisticated in taking an LSD trip at all. They're just being complete fools.
Fear.
Almost everybody who got turned on became deeply skeptical of all governments and politicians.
And the authorities said, oh, we've got to stop this right away. People are waking up. We don't want this to happen.
One reason or another, LSD was given to an elephant once.
The propaganda machine telling people about all the awful things that had happened cranked up.
And lo and behold, it killed the elephant.
Freakouts. Instant insanity.
Did any of you guys have to take LSD as part of being undercover?
Take LSD, are you crazy?
A never, never land of no return.
You might be the one guy that trips out on this stuff. LSD started out a low penalty drug. But then as people began to learn more and more about what it did to you, then it worked its way up the scale.
The other side would disagree with that and say that maybe it was tied to the anti-war movement or other movements, but my impression was that serious people involved in science and medicine were seeing it, LSD as a bigger problem.
The manufacturer of illicit LSD should be vigorously sought and prosecuted.
I don't care what the government say. They're all just a crock of shit. Oh, out for power and money. That was not my trip.
It was too fucking much. The law said it's no longer legal to make LSD, so we finished it all up. One of the things you need to remember about the United States is that there's 50 different states and they aren't all that united. It became illegal in California before other places, so that's why the Denver lab was not in California.
I ran a house not far from the Denver Zoo.
Setting up the lab went well. Owsley proceeded to come to the lab and make acid with us.
When that work was done, Owsley went back to the Bay Area and organized a tableting facility for the LSD.
All right, that threads that sort of lavender blue throughout the snake and leapfrogs the last section. So I'm going to cut it here and then figure out what's next for a scale color or another portion to work on. Back.
With a new partner, I made a beautiful laboratory.
Okay, so now I've mixed up some rose red into a little bit of white for kind of a bright or a deepish rose pink. So here we go.
Everybody was very happy. The industry was moving into this impoverished area, and I was getting kudos from the mayor. We made a lot of beautiful psychedelics. You know, we were right out in the open. You know, one more job, one more paycheck. We didn't really accept checks, though.
We went through all the bank accounts for Nicholas Sand and a number of other accounts we located. William Hitchcock, Robert Timothy Scott.
I was very scared. If Nick kept on cooking, he would eventually bring down all of us in a huge conspiracy case. Billy and I tried to talk him into taking some time out, just the way Don Douglas tried to talk me into taking time out.
Nick was totally irresponsible in the way he was going about his business, and he was jeopardizing everyone else who was involved in the Windsor lab.
Nick responded by saying that it wasn't none of our business what he did, and after all, hadn't we agreed to try to turn on the world?
That's pretty common with high-level traffickers. They must have their own addiction, because they often continue to business way beyond what, prudence would dictate.
On top of that, I've slowly been getting less and less enthusiastic about what I've been doing. Things were looking somewhat darker in Haight-Ashbury.
That group that was still left in the Haight-Ashbury started to seem more like lost souls. The age of the flower children was gone. There was a lot more methamphetamine, there was a lot more murders and violence. There was more presence of the Hells Angels and other motorcycle groups. It was a trip.
People that I knew had peak experiences and had the experience of oneness, still treating each other really badly and dishonestly. I still believed that LSD was a good thing, but I was no longer convinced that it was the solution to the world's problems. But I got turned on to biofeedback instruments. I'm going to measure the electrical activity of your brain as it leaks out onto the scalp. There were some early studies done that related the brainwaves of Zen monks and yoga masters to particular brainwave patterns when they were meditating. I saw brainwave biofeedback as a possible way of teaching people to reach that state of oneness with the universe without having to use drugs.
So you're still trying to turn the world on?
I'm trying to a gentler way, yeah. And then in late 1971, I got a phone call telling me I was off the hook for the Denver lab. Because the police hadn't brought the search warrant. The state Supreme Court had ruled that the search was illegal. And it was tremendously liberating. The road ahead was clear for doing research in lots of different directions. Unless Nick did something really foolish, I'd somehow managed to escape getting punished for what I'd been doing.
So here I am in St. Louis. It's getting very cold in Missouri, and we decide to go traveling in Mexico and taking a vacation. Unbeknownst to me, the water pipe broke in the house, and the neighbors, they could see water running down the stairs. The sheriff for that town breaks in. They go up to my bedroom and they find the leak in the bathroom nearby. They also go into my closet and they find some psychedelics. and then they discovered the lab.
Powdered LSD capable of producing over 14 million tablets of iron sunshine was found at 2 locations.
It was in all the papers. I just didn't happen to see the papers. When I pulled up,
Driver, step outside slowly.
5 heavy-duty guys with shotguns jumped out and said,
If you make any sudden moves, you'll be shot immediately.
"What a country."
Keep your hands away from your body and drop full down.
It was a no shit moment.
Take your left hand.
When I was at busted neck, I think I'm in deeper hot water. I suspected there was a good chance that Nick would have things with him that would be used as evidence against me.
Marijuana, LSD, some mescaline.
I made a personal bet that he'd probably still have that flowchart with him that showed him the process for making LSD on one page. And it turned out he did.
Is the gamble of drug exploration worth this? Is it worth the physical and mental risk as well?
Well, a grand jury was convened specifically to investigate Nick, Billy, and I. I eventually hid out in a friend's house. While I was there, I got a phone call from Billy Hitchcock, and he told me, "I have bad news for you."
Would you say that you were a close personal friend of Mr. Scully?
Yes, I would. I advised him of my tax problems. I told him I was cooperating with the government where I would have to reveal the whole situation.
He'd been indicted for income tax evasion, and he didn't see any other way out.
Billy wasn't the final piece in the puzzle. He was that one in the middle that you spend a half an hour looking for, and then once you find that one, everything seems to fall into place.
Owsley and Nick Sand gave Billy large amounts of money to send offshore in the Swiss bank accounts.
He would launder money for us. Noble he was not.
It's just like fishing. You reel it in and you look at it and you figure, I can get a bigger one than this. So I'll tell him, hey, I'll throw you back if you can give me somebody else.
My lawyer came and read off the names of the unindicted co-conspirators. I said, then he couldn't claim, what's an unindicted co-conspirator? He said, a snitch, someone who has turned state's evidence against you. I said, Billy?
It's just another example of idealism fading in the face of reality.
He offered to loan me $10,000, which he encouraged me to use to hire a lawyer so that I could also turn and become a government witness.
Anybody can be turned. The question is, how much do you have to give them in order for them to turn?
He said Tim is considering whether or not to turn state's evidence.
Do the same thing I did and make a deal with the government.
I was shocked right down to the soles of my feet.
I said, I'll take the money and I'll make my best choice.
I couldn't believe it.
Remain seated and come to order for the beginning session.
I realized that if I did become a witness against Nick, that I would end up feeling really bad about myself for the rest of my life.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this next case is people.
The way I'd end up feeling best about myself would be if I faced the music and tried to fight the charges. Billy ended up testifying for a couple of days. His testimony was pretty damning.
They were manufacturing LSD. Somewhere between 3 and 4 million tabs.
Pretty painful to hear.
Scully made just about 1 million tablets.
They knew what we did and where we did it.
It came to the Bahamas.
There's a word that kind of describes Billy. It's in Yiddish, but it's such a perfect word. He's a zlum.
Yes, I met with my grandma.
Billy Hitchcock's a punk, and he always was. He's a rich guy. Don't try to take a rich guy's money away.
I never held that against Billy. I think most people would say of themselves, the stupid thing was bringing him to the laboratory, that he had something to, you know, there were a lot of those blunders all along the line that were just, just show-off maneuvers that were dumb.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
The trial judge, Samuel Conti, is known as Hanging Sam.
Oh, Judge Conti was a fine American. He was one of our favorite judges. Judge Conti was tough, but I think fair.
The advancement to the subject of this proceeding.
In one of the pretrial proceedings, he said he wished he had access to the death penalty in our case, which gave us a pretty good clue of what he was going to do in terms of sentencing.
And the man was just like...
Objection, Your Honor. Motion to strike. That's easy.
Why don't you both approach the bench?
Every motion that we made, Conti just denied. Interrupted our lawyers, yelled at them. I mean, he's a sick man. It was blow after blow after blow. And they had 63 witnesses for the prosecution. They spent $1 or $2 million. And I feel pretty proud that it cost them that much to get me. And I'm just one little guy, you know, with a good idea.
When I got on the stand, I really wanted to try to explain why we made psychedelics. I actually did convince the judge that there was a chance that I was an idealist rather than in it for the money. But when he sentenced me, he said, idealists are the most dangerous kind. And sunk it to me in 20 years.
Mr. Scully is a brilliant man, but not very smart. An idealist without a conscience. He was impeding justice and impeding the moral lives and well-being of many, many citizens.
Heroically, he stood up for us and really got slammed for it. He got a 20-year sentence. I got only a 15-year sentence.
That was a really bad moment. And I didn't have long in the courtroom to think about it. I was whisked away pretty quickly to the holding cell.
Deep in my heart, I have some sympathy for all the people who went to prison. I don't really have sympathy on the basis of the chronology. Maybe he is not doing it anymore and doesn't intend to do it anymore, but the fact is he did it, and he was an important trafficker, and an example has to be set for other people who want to enter the business.
I climbed up on the bunk and pulled the blanket over my head and cried for a while because I thought it was going to be pretty scary being in prison for a long time. I was going to get sent where all those tough guys were that I didn't get along with very well in high school.
It's McNeil Island Federal Penitentiary, the oldest federal penal facility in the United States.
I was sent up to McNeil Island in waving belly chains and handcuffs. They put you through a delousing procedure, take away your clothes, and put you through a special shower and medicinal scrub.
When I first drove up, I made a knife I used to use.
There were guys who'd been in motorcycle gangs, guys who were there for murder. There was one Eskimo who was there for eating his whole family. They were generally a fairly intimidating lot.
I couldn't begin to tell you how many people in here have had encounters that they didn't want.
A lot of the guys were frightened. they would be turned into a punk and be raped by the other prisoners.
As part of the dehumanization process, there's only one way to do time, and that's to do it one day at a time. It's the only way you can and keep your sanity.
I did have a little difficulty at first because a number of people tried to make me offers I couldn't refuse to become the distributor for all the drugs they expected I was going to be bringing into the prison. The answer I gave all of them was, just wait for my crime partner to get here, I don't have any drugs.
Usually, crime partners, as they're referred to, are kept separate. For some reason, they put us together. We were bunkies. He had the top bunk, I had the bottom bunk. My girlfriend at the time would come to the prison, and she would have a balloon with a variety of psychedelics in it. When we got up to be allowed our one hug and kiss, she put the balloon from her mouth into mine, and I swallowed it. I had to shit it out, and I had to clean it up, and then I had to unwrap it, and then I had to figure some way of dosing it out.
He started running sessions in the cell. He would typically do it after lights out. He'd open the door to his locker where he had a picture of Ganesh pasted in the door, light a candle, and he and the other folks who were getting high would sit around shielded from the guards' vision as they walked by. I mean, he's a great session guy.
We formed a 8-man psychedelic cell, had a mafia guy in it. He took acid with us, because he wasn't a pussy. As he came out of that session, he said, "Hey guys, you know, that's the first time I've been in church in 30 years. I began to monitor the delivery of food. Somehow I got some LSD in there, and the word got out. Everybody would rather take LSD than be just sitting in jail, right? We got the whole the prison stoned. This is what freedom is really about. It's not about not being in chains. It's about not having your mind enslaved.
I just didn't take part in it. I went to bed and read a book if the lights were still on, and when the lights went out, I always went to sleep. The prison library was in terrible shape. I offered to update the card catalog so it would be accurate, and the librarian said, "Okay, you're hired."
Tim got up in the morning as soon as the gates were open, boom, stayed there all day. He was studying the case, trying to find constitutional issues that would help get us off.
Judge Conti had set our bail at a very, very high figure, $500,000 each. We filed bail appeals. So we both got out on appeal bond.
And that was a big relief.
I said goodbye to Nick in prison. I remember wishing him luck.
I couldn't really focus on anything for a while. It's hard to come back in after you've been in that system. The system changes you, and not for the better.
It took a few months for the Supreme Court to decline to hear my case. And when I heard we'd lost that appeal, I wasn't tremendously surprised, but I was really disappointed. I was doing everything I could to get ready to go back to prison.
I had a little houseboat in Sausalito. I was living there with my Buddha and all my Persian carpets that I like to collect. And we were just sitting down preparing for a psychedelic session that I was going to be guiding for 12 people from the Bay Area. As I was finishing up all the preparations, Nancy came in and said, "We've got to get you out of here." I just got a call from Tim. They have denied your appeal, and you're going to be picked up in a few days and taken to prison.
Yes. Look good. I met Nick in 1969. He turned me on to Orange Sunshine. And I didn't leave that room for 3 days. And I must say I fell madly in love with that person and what he was.
Alright, that rose pink is very thin. It's difficult to get it to cover smoothly, so I think I'm going to switch over for the smaller scales for the next session. So that's it for the moment. Alright, Earth, there's only a few minutes left on this video clip. I've mixed up a turquoise for another layer of scales. My head feels a bit like a cement mixer still. I got some penicillin for the broken tooth and I had a slight infection, yada yada. Anyway, got to go back to the dentist, but still feeling a little groggy today. So I thought I'd do an overview to start. Garage Art may be closing soon. So if anybody in town or around needs a canvas show, I've got quite a few. So I don't know how much longer this place is going to be here. Thought I'd do an overview because I'm pretty proud of it. Even though it's not my space, it's just some shelves and paintings. But, you know, I did the paintings and I was told there would be a gallery warehouse spot and I was given a pile of shit and trash. And I've turned it into a pretty nice space to be. So, anyway, I appreciate the space and the time to have been. But it looks like it's over. So if anybody needs any art, everything must go. I'm trying to sell this shit quick and fucking fast. So, Garage Art, in between Taos, Outback Pizza, and Allsup's, on whatever fucking side of town this is.
To be above threshold. The threshold of DMT.
Alright, I'm going to take some deep breaths and do some scales.
Example is around 30. So there's plenty of DMT to be above threshold, and there's certainly enough of the beta-carbolines to inhibit MAO, but probably not enough of the beta-carbolines to be doing much on their own in terms of psychoactivity. Carmine is not that active, even up to a gram has been reported inactive. Similarly, the monoamine oxidase activity this is percent of MAO inhibition, and this is decreasing concentrations. So obviously undiluted brews, or just, you know, cleaned up brews, but undiluted, give 100% inhibition. And as you start diluting them by orders of magnitude, you don't really get a significant reduction in activity until you've gone to about 10 to the minus 7. So you've diluted it to a factor of 10 million, and even at that point, it still inhibits, you know, close to 50% of the alkaloid, or of the enzyme activity. So it is a strong MAO inhibitor. I also looked at DMT and harmine and harmaline mixtures of the pure compounds, ayahuasca analogs, if you will, that were present in either equimolar concentration or the same concentration as I found in the ayahuasca. But basically, the take-home lesson is there was no synergistic effect. They didn't seem to, they were additive but not synergistic. So, the conclusion is active constituents of ayahuasca, the major alkaloids detected were harmine, tetrahydroharmine, DMT, and harmaline in that order. And a typical 100 ml dose contains about 730 milligrams total alkaloid, of which 65% is harmine, 22% is tetrahydroharmine, 8% is DMT, and 5% is harmaline. And a typical dose contains between 20 and 70 milligrams of DMT, which is a physiologically active concentration. and sufficient concentrations of beta-carotene to inhibit MAO, but not enough to be hallucinogenically active themselves. And as I already said, I did do, the only thing I didn't mention here, ayahuasca groups were highly active as MAO inhibitors. This should surprise no one. The SAR studies of the beta-carotene, I looked at some different beta-carotene derivatives and found that carmine was the most active of the three main constituents, so more active than carmine or tetrahydrocarmine as a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. And I found no evidence of synergistic action. Okay, so that's what I did in 71, and that was part of my thesis work. So now we can flash forward to 1993. Or actually, we can flash forward to 1991. And in 1991, I was invited to attend a conference in Sao Paulo, put on by an organization called the UDAVE, a Brazilian organization that is basically a syncretic church, an ayahuasca cult that in Brazil, where ayahuasca is known either as huasca or the vegetal, or sometimes just the tea, cha. An interesting phenomenon has occurred, which is there has developed the appearance of these syncretic religious movements. These are not who use ayahuasca ritually in their ceremonies, and they have a complex doctrine. They're very moral, and it's kind of like a fundamentalist Christian cult, only without the emphasis on the Christian elements. Their thing is about the tea and about really on the metaphysical level about the plant-human alliance, I think. I mean, it's very ecologically oriented and it's very ethically oriented. But what's interesting is that the members are largely not mestizo. There is a big mestizo or caboclo component, as it's called in Brazil. But also there are many middle-class members and many professionals, including doctors, psychiatrists, scientists, people like that. So this conference was hosted by a subsection of the UDV that was assigned for medical studies. And they hosted this conference, the first international conference on the tea, and they invited a number of people to give talks at this conference, and then they invited me because of my previous work. So I went down and I gave a talk. I spent a very pleasant couple of days with them, and I brought up this idea of doing a biomedical study of ayahuasca, which Eduardo Luna and I had written up in 1985 after we'd come back from Peru, but couldn't get anyone to listen really, and I didn't really press it. But I brought it up to them, and they said, well, that's great. That's what we want to do. So it turns out that, so we decided to, collaborate, and I suggested that we try to get funding through Botanical Dimensions. So I went back and wrote a proposal. Originally, we were going to submit a grant to NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, try and get a government research grant to do this. Well, the more I wrote into this proposal, the more I worked on it, the more I realized it will never fly. So I thought, well, why don't we just try and find some wealthy contributors or semi-wealthy contributors and get it going that way. So we sort of use the connections we've made through Botanical Dimensions. There are people who have supported and have given substantial gifts, and so we contacted these people, and it actually was pretty easy. They were happy to help, and so as a result, we were able to collect $75,000, primarily from three main donors who I won't mention, but I would like to acknowledge their help. Without them, this couldn't be done. But I'm not going to say their names. I'm sure lots of you know who they are. At any rate, we were able to get this money. Now, had we done this in the States, and as it became clear as we were doing the study down there, this work, the work that we were able to accomplish for $75,000 would have taken 2 years and cost probably $500,000 to $1 million. But because we had all this cooperation from the UDB down there, and because we were enthusiasts, we were able to get a lot of things done for a lot much less, much more than I ever dared hope we would be able to do. So we got this money, and the field phase of this took about 2 years. So 2 years later, it's now 1993, and we got the money together, the financing together the previous fall, basically. So in June and July, Charlie Grove and I and Jason Calloway from the University of Kuopio in Finland. Charlie Grove is from Irvine. Annalise Schinzinger, who's a member of the UDB and who actually does our translator and guide, and has been just tremendous with everything she's done. Went down there and we met with our Brazilian colleagues, primarily Glaucus de Souza Brito, who's the head of the medical studies section of the UDB and was the medical coordinator on the Brazilian side. So we went down, we all traveled to Manaus. Manaus is the largest city on the Amazon, and it's a center of concentration of the UDB. There's some of the oldest temples are there. The UDB's been around 30 years or so. But some of the oldest temples are there. So we went to Manaus. There were plenty of volunteers, people really eager to be involved in the study. I mean, such enthusiasm. So we went there and we carried out this study. And if I had an overhead projector, I would use it, but I don't. So I will just summarize what the initial objectives of this study were. First of all, we wanted to measure physiological effects, whatever we could measure. This is a data gathering study, so we don't know exactly what the results will be. Any information is new information. So that was the sort of the spirit in which we approached this. We were interested, first of all, in long-term effects that might be measurable. Many of these people take ayahuasca regularly, on an average of once a week, sometimes several times a week for years, most of their adult life. They appear to suffer no ill effects. They appear to be extremely healthy people. Many of the older ones, are now pushing 80, and I can tell you if I'm in that shape when I'm 80, I'll be real happy. But again, without making judgments whether this was good or bad, our question was, are there long-term effects? Can you discern a biochemical marker of some sort in the people that take the stuff versus a similarly matched control group where people don't take it, but otherwise a similar matched group? So we focused in on blood
turquoise is nice. The first 3 scales were bitter and angry, but they're getting better. How much time we got left? 11 minutes.
Model in
Alright, I'm going to run out the clock on turquoise.
In the psychopharmacology of depression, for example, blood platelets in some ways are considered a peripheral model of the central serotonin system. Blood platelets have serotonin receptors on them. Many of the same receptors are similar to those that are found in the central nervous system serotonin system. Treatment with antidepressants, psychiatric medication will cause these platelet receptors to up and down regulate, to vary in numbers over time as you tweak them with various serotonergic agents. Platelets also have monoamine oxidase, so you can get a handle on that. So we decided to look at platelets because, there's some controversy as to whether it's really a true reflection of the central nervous system, but it's a peripheral handle, and you can't really ask these people to donate their brains. So what we want to do, we took plasma samples from 15 subjects, volunteers, who had all drunk ayahuasca at least 10 years. And we had a similarly matched control group, age and sex matched. The work was all men initially. Apologies to the women, but that's the next phase. We thought, just to keep things simple, we'd hold to one sex in this initial study. And we took platelet samples from a group of 15 matched controls, or actually I think we ended up with 13 controls. And Jace Calloway at the University of Cupia is going to do the platelet receptor binding and the MAO assays. He has techniques set up to do this. The two receptors that we want to look at, serotonin receptors, are the 5-HT2 receptors, which really use ketanserin and tritiated ketanserin, radioactive 5-HT2 antagonist, and iodine-125 labeled DOI, which is a psychotomimetic phenethylamine, or a hallucinogenic psychedelic phenethylamine. And both of these label the 5-HT2 receptors. So we're going to look at that to see if we can determine any modulation, basically, in the density of the receptors, either the affinity of the receptors for different substrates, or the overall density, the so-called B max of the receptors. We're also going to look at the 5-HT transporter molecule, the 5-HT carrier, which is also found in the platelets, which can be labeled with a compound called citalopram, or sometimes they use another one called paroxetine. These are selective serotonin uptake blockers. These are the receptors that are on the platelets, and these are the ones that you would expect the ayahuasca to modulate. I mean, these are the ones that they, in terms of what we know about its pharmacology, that should be what it modulates. We also measured any other acute, the other aspect of the physiological study was acute effects. Physiological responses, obvious ones: heart rate, blood pressure, body temperature, pupillary diameter. In other words, this is when we gave ayahuasca to, we took the same group of 15 subjects, we had them come in pairs or groups of 3 actually, mostly, and they all got dosed with ayahuasca. And then at different time points, we measured these physiological parameters for a period of about up to 24 hours following administration. We also did, the other 2 things we did in the acute study, or will do, is pharmacokinetics. We drew blood samples at different times after the administration and put those on dry ice, spun the things down in a centrifuge and collected the plasma, froze those on dry ice, and those are going to be analyzed for DMT and harmine, possibly other metabolites, but those 2 by Kim Fall at the UCLA Medical Center. The other aspect of the acute study was a neuroendocrine challenge. We also took aliquots of plasma samples and froze those, and we're going to look at different hormone levels. We're using this as a variation on the so-called tryptophan challenge test. You can give tryptophan to intravenously to challenge your serotonergic system. Well, we're giving, instead of tryptophan, we're giving ayahuasca, and we're looking for a hormonal response in hormones like prolactin, ACTH, cortisol, and I believe we're also going to look at beta endorphins. So that's the physiological aspect. The psychological study was that basically 2. Questionnaire which measures personality style, traits, and brain functions, and results in a score called the TPQ, the trigeminal personality quotient. You have to ask a psychiatrist what that is. But that's, it's an accepted test and these sorts of things. The CD is another test, CIDI. This is a structured psychiatric diagnostic interview linked to the ICD-10 and used by the World Health Organization. This is an international standard for diagnosing mental conditions, mental diseases. We used the UCLA WHO auditory memory test, which is a test that measures memory, concentration, attention span, and short-term memory retrieval. And again, these are just ways to get a handle on, how are these people functioning. The second component of this psychological study was to do open-ended psychiatric interviews, which Charlie Crow largely did with Annalisa's self-translating, which was basically just interviews with each person in the study up to 2 hours. And some very interesting results came out of that. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. Okay, so all this, the field work was done, the stuff is in the freezer. We feel very happy about the way the field phase went, but it's all in the future. What I'm going to show you now is just some of the, part of this study. In addition to the physiological work on the human subjects, we're also doing phytochemical analysis. We have to analyze the brews that we used. One research brew was prepared for this study, and they put on a special preparo for us, as they call it, a preparo. And that's what I'm going to show you is this preparo. We collected
so that's a good toe hold to change gears back into this one for the weekend.
Dry, fresh, and that they all
I feel a little better after some turquoise meditation. Just a little cranky there thinking about this everything.
We guesstimated the dose. We gave the subjects 2
ain't so peachy right now for quite a few folk.
Of the ayahuasca to standardize the dose in terms of people's body
but it also seems to be catalyzing a great deal of change.
But we don't have the missing
interesting results going on in the primaries right now. Good for them. And who knows, maybe New York will become a habitable place again. And an artist might be able to go there and live rather than go there and die. So, you never know what'll happen. Anywho, that's Adam Sturch broadcasting from Garage Art for the moment, working on oil painting. Here we are. A few more scales in. I like the way the figure and the coat are looking more stark against the bright color. Not quite as busy for when I begin to populate the Dragon Road with figures. So tomorrow I'll try and get here a little earlier, stay a little later, and be in a better frame of mind. Thanks everyone. Have a good night.